Hi friends, I'm Liz.
I'm Robby. Welcome back to our channel, Bookworm Couple. Today we are going to be discussing Sea of Monsters by Rick Riordan, the second book in the Percy Jackson series.
Can I show it now?
You're sure, if you really want to. We're going to show it in the video, but Liz likes showing it if we have the physical
When
copy.
I have a library book, man, do I feel good. I feel so happy and content with life.
We read a lot on our Kindles.
Yes.
So having a physical book is a rare treat.
Very exciting. Are you going to make me do the wrap-up of this book?
Yes,
Oh,
obviously.
no.
So, what did you think of the book first?
I really liked it.
Yeah?
I know the characters a little better now, and so I was very excited to see what was happening with them. I did think it felt like a quicker read.
Yes.
I don't know if it's because I knew the style or because this book moved faster than the first,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. Lots of sea time, which I find very
Yes.
exciting. I love an ocean situation.
Ocean Voyage.
I'm a Pisces gal, so I found that intriguing and it pushed me through. I really liked it. Yeah, I definitely liked it better than the first, which I didn't dislike the first, but I definitely liked it better than the first.
Great, that's good. I personally, I liked it as well. I also read through it much faster. I blew through this book in like a day or two. We liked it a lot. I did like it. I had, I don't know if problems is the right word, but it's very... I find that it suffered from middle book syndrome simply because I think that the plot played second fiddle to setting things up for future events.
See, I didn't think that.
Oh,
I
really?
think I was just very entertained.
Great.
But I also think that was partially because of all of the myths and things that I knew of. I was like, oh, I know this one. And like little things coming in, so maybe that was why.
Sure.
I didn't really think too much. The background plot made sense of the setup, but I enjoyed... If this was set up, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I still really enjoyed the book. I do think that there were a few issues present that were just pretty noticeable to me, that specifically the main plot seemed to be resolved unbelievably quickly after a lot of build-up in favor of making sure we got some setup for future events. But we'll talk about that more a little bit farther into the discussion. Liz, why don't you give them a brief, focus on brief, synopsis of this book without spoiling anything.
So basically, a whole year has gone by, bunch of stuff happens, we've got to go find the Golden Fleece. Do we find it? I don't know. How was that?
Sure.
You give your synopsis and show them how much better you are.
Let's see, off the top of my head. Okay, this continues the story of Percy and his friends. We have fast-forwarded a year, school year has gone by, and through a series of events, Percy, of course, ends up back at Camp Half-Blood, but there is trouble brewing, and he and his friends have to go on yet another quest to try and save Camp Half-Blood, and it leads them into the Sea of Monsters.
That was so much better.
That's my synopsis.
I don't know why I can't do that.
Let us know in the comments which one you liked better.
Are you going to put in my chaotic first try?
I am, yes.
Okay.
No, I'm not. I'm going to put in the one that
The bad one?
I'm going to put in the one that you just did versus the one I did, and we'll see which one people like. I don't know. That might not be true. People might not agree with that. Okay, so we are going to start discussing some more details of the book, so there may be spoilers going forward. Just a warning to any of you who have not read it yet. Again, if you haven't, I highly recommend you go check it out. It's another great entry in the series, in my opinion, and it's also less than 300 pages long, which means you can probably bang it out pretty quickly.
You will read.
Go read it, come back, we'll still be here when you get back, and we'll wait. Okay. So, has your opinion on the gang, the main gang, changed at all? Especially knowing that Grover was not a part of a lot of this book for the first 3/4 of it, really.
Yeah, no, you know what? And it's not because he wasn't a part. I liked Grover a lot more in this book.
Really?
Yeah. He grew on me. I'm not usually like... it's not that I'm not a fan of like the like clownish character, but especially I feel like in a children's book, he's very much a caricature of this like anxious little ball of worry, which is funny, but like not quite my sense of humor even as a kid. Sure. And this time I think I saw more of his heart, I think. So I really liked him more. Annabeth, queen. Love. Percy, great. Tyson is the winner of my heart.
Yeah. I have a deep and abiding love for Tyson.
The winner. He is incredible. I literally wrote down, literally with all caps, Tyson and Rainbow!
Yeah, Tyson and Rainbow rock.
And his relationship with this beautiful seahorse. My favorite thing. That's all. I love him.
Yeah, Tyson's great. I think he's a wonderful addition to this book.
And his growth throughout the series. or throughout the book, is just so beautiful. Like, the more you get to know him.
I do think Tyson is absolutely the heart of this book. I think, I don't want to say he's the saving grace, but he was the thing that really, really made it all come together for me. Especially because of the way that he, I don't know about challenges Percy, but Percy is kind of seen as a good kid, just kind of tangentially in the background, because in the first book, he's friends with Grover, who is the kid who's picked on in school. And even though if he wasn't friends with Grover, it might be easier for him. And the same thing is happening with Tyson. And Tyson is a homeless kid, and him and his mom are, Sally Jackson, Queen, him and his mom are going out of their way to try and make sure he has the support he needs. I love the bit in the locker room where Tyson is very self-conscious about changing, and so Percy watches the door for him and stuff. It's great, but Percy also spends the whole time being kind of embarrassed, and that is challenged as the book goes on. I did find it kind of funny that even about halfway through the book, by which time Tyson had actually fully saved everyone's life two or three times. He was still being like, I'm kind of embarrassed by Tyson's my brother, and I was like, okay, but Tyson...
Which I guess is like a fair reaction for a preteen kid.
Sure, yeah. But I really enjoyed how Tyson challenged Percy that way, and also, yes, the bit where it's revealed that we get more of Tyson's perspective as he opens up that he prayed to his dad for Percy was just heartbreaking.
I cried.
Yeah, I
was legitimately brought to tears when I read that.
Ridiculous.
I was not expecting that. Also, it was at the end of the book when everything was like fading out, and I was like, oh, cute, we're gonna like wrap it up cute. And then he says that his dad gave him a friend, aka his brother. Sobbing. I cried. I also wrote down, I can't tell if Poseidon is cool or a total dick.
Well, actually, that actually brings up a good point that I wanted to talk about. Like, I know I'm noticing things reading them as an adult that I didn't when I read them, even as like a late teen. Because I am really loving how every god has been depicted so far. I think Hermes is great. I think, like, he's a mailman who also sells sketchy vitamins.
He's just kind of chaotic.
Which is really funny. But I wrote down specifically, I was like, I can tell I'm old now because I'm reading these bits with Hermes and being like, wow, I'm really fascinated on this take of parenthood from a god from this author. And I know that when I was reading them when I was younger, I blew past this part and didn't care. But when he's talking about why he can't help Luke in the way that Luke thinks he wants to be helped, because if he solved every problem he had, he would still hate them. I was like, this is good stuff. This is fascinating. And I'm like, I 100% didn't even care or notice this the last time I read it. So I thought that was really fun. The way that, and like you said, Poseidon's kind of a dick. All of the gods are kind of dicks. Ares is, of course, a sexist when he's telling Clarice, maybe one of my sons should have done this.
What a
but
jerk.
Not a surprise. But that's the thing. They all kind of are. And
which is an interesting journey in this series. Like, I found myself in the first book, found it kind of funny that the Half-Bloods were referring to these people as their parents. Of like, oh, my dad, Poseidon. It's like, it's not really your dad. Like, he's barely been around. And there's like some of that like heartbreak with them, with some of the characters of like, oh, my dad was never around, or my mother was never around. But I also feel it funny that they refer to these people as their parents, even though they have little to nothing to do with their lives whatsoever.
Speaking of, how did you feel about Luke on this one and the bits we got to see of him? Because I know that you thought he was a bad guy. The first time you were not fooled.
I keep coming back to the Halloween Town quote. That Luke dude, he's such a wiener. So basically every time I see him, such a wiener.
You know what I will say is I didn't remember that after he's made his full heel turn into I'm evil, he becomes like a preppy guy.
Yeah.
Which I thought was very funny. I was like, that was not on my bingo card.
I was actually kind of laughing as I was reading it, because then I also remembered this is like a New York-based book.
Yes.
And the description of what he was wearing, I was like, oh, he's a finance bro.
Yes.
Luke is a finance bro.
Luke has turned into a finance bro.
All he needed was a vest, and then he would in. But I did think that was very funny that he became like a preppy, fide-eye guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought that was
Which, as a New Yorker, I very much, I relate.
Sure.
And I'm like, oh yeah, there is definitely a stigma, at least from the circles that we run in, to that kind of a vibe. I did think that was very funny.
Yeah.
I like and it was so funny because I know you're not one that's big on like picturing things in your mind, but I very much am when I get a description of dress or a place, I sometimes will read things multiple times, so I make sure I have the whole thing mapped out in my head so I can go through the scene like living in it.
Mm-hmm.
And with the description of Luke's nude thing, it was like, brrr, like it just, I got it. Don't even have to think about it. I was like, know exactly what we're going for. Great. Great.
Yeah.
I was actually intrigued of like the little bit of humanizing that they did for him. There were like a few quotes that Percy was rethinking about later on after his initial interactions with him, of being like, what was he trying to say? Like, was he like kind of relating to him in a way of like, oh, maybe I would want to strip everything clean and start fresh, which I thought was interesting, but still he sucks.
I do think I literally wrote down in my notes, Luke wants to take down the Western world. Big swing, very Russian of him. But
Big swing.
I mean, I think that they do a decent job, especially with the limited amount of pages we have with him in this book, of giving him a more relatable justification for his actions.
Yeah,
they give us a bit more about him, which I think is good, because before it was just like, he's like, I'm mad and I'm bad. And so the more we get on him and about why he's doing what he's doing, and also if he couldn't explain what he is doing in a way that's not just like, I'm evil and I want to destroy everything, that's not really engaging in any way. So I think it's great that he can at least put into words like, I'm doing this because I think eventually it will be, because I think it can be a good thing.
Well, and it was interesting seeing him like not be like, I hate you, Percy Jackson. You know, it was just kind of like, oh, this guy, I gotta take care of him. But then there was also like a little bit of care for these people, which I think will have a well-rounded villain character.
I did think it was funny that, of course, he has a black Pegasus.
Oh, yeah,
So
it's got raven's wings and...
So edgy.
Yeah, edge lord.
How did you feel about Kieran being gone and his relatives, the party ponies?
It took me a while to like, not until they came and saved the day on the cruise ship did I really put into play of like, oh, I see.
They're just the embodiment of Florida Man. They're great.
They're great. I thought they were so fun, and how they embraced Tyson, and like it just was a silly thing. Also, I think the idea it's very funny because I think of the juxtaposition of how I have placed that character in my head, of how he holds himself and talks and walks.
Sure.
Was very opposite of what the like Florida cousins were, and I just think that was very funny. Very funny.
Yeah. And with the cool detail of the fact that Kronos is his father.
Yes.
Which is very complicated.
Yes. I have found it so fun in these books, and I think this one in particular, of the I am someone who has always enjoyed mythology and lore, and so a lot of the stories and characters I was familiar with, which I loved, and was excited to see of like, oh, if a name popped in that I remembered. A lot of the times I don't necessarily remember the stories, but I've like, oh, I know this name. Okay, there's something about them. I'm curious to see how they make this come to. Like, Tantalus, is that his name?
Yes.
I immediately was like, oh, that's the guy who was like tortured for the rest of his whole life. And so it was funny because of course he's coming into this book and I'm like, oh, instantly I know he's a bad guy. Because I doubt you're going to play him differently.
Yeah, sure.
But it was fun to watch. It is fun when I have those recognition bits to then see how they unfold that story. I think it's been interesting to see how a middle grade book is going to take on these myths and spin them, because there's obviously 1,000 different retellings of these stories, and often I read more adult versions of them in a fictional way, but often I read adult retellings of these myths, and so it's fun to see it from a like preteen perspective.
Sure. How did you like Circe? Did you know Circe going in?
I thought that was fun.
No, it was good.
I also think I wrote this down. This is classic Liz. Classic Liz of Percy being like, oh my gosh, Annabeth came in and she got a makeover and she wore makeup. She never wears makeup. So I have multiple reactions to this as a female. I feel like many of us probably have this. I love makeup. I'm wearing makeup. It's great. I feel amazing in makeup. The like judgment of wearing makeup always frustrates me, especially as someone who has loved it their whole life. And so Percy was being like, wow, she looks good. And then being like, but she doesn't ever wear makeup. That's not her. Drove me crazy for the 3 seconds that I read it. But that is just a personal thing. And also coming from a male written perspective, I was like, okay. Just, I rolled my eyes at it a little bit.
What you were saying before about how you liked how all the different gods and the situations that they were in, I thought that that was probably one of the best part of the book for me.
Yeah.
Was the different, I remember I mentioned in the last video, by the end of the book, I was kind of like, really, everywhere we stop, there's going to be something. I don't know why. Maybe there were less of them this time, but every time it happened, I was 100% in.
Yeah.
I thought it was really interesting. I thought the monster donut thing with the Hydra was super clever. Again,
you cut
fantastic.
off a Hydra's head and
another monster donut shows up. Again, I think fascinating, hilarious, and interesting world building. Mm-hmm. So I wrote down on multiple occasions while reading this book the amount of little anecdotes or references to Greek mythological characters or situations is just impressive. There's so many of them. Mm-hmm. It's not repeating anything, it's just going again and again and again. And then also, there's the bits where he name drops a historically accurate Civil War era type of ship and the names of and types of the guns on said ship. It made me literally write down how much research actually went into this, how much did he know, and had to look up and find out that I was like, he must have been a history teacher or something.
Sure.
And he was a social studies teacher for 8 years. But I was just like, the amount of research, and again, talking about things I'm sure I did not even pay a second's thought to.
No, but I think I would have been very excited about it as a kid who was a nerd and liked school. I would have been very excited reading this and being like, oh, I know this piece of history, but that was just who I was as a kid who loved school, specifically loved history. It was my favorite class in school. So I think reading something like this as a preteen or teenager, I would have been really pumped about.
Yes, but anyway, I enjoyed all of the different stops they made. The Monster Donut was really fun. Clarice with the gunship was great. I think that the bit between, while they were entering the Sea of Monsters, and speaking of, I wrote down while I was reading this, the Bermuda Triangle. Don't really hear about that much anymore, do we? That was such a thing in like the early 2000s, but it's not really anymore. Anyway, when they're entering the Sea of Monsters, the bit where they're between the maelstrom and the cliff, Scylla and I don't remember the other one's name. Yeah, exactly. I thought that was like the most thrilling sequence they've had so far. Too. I was like, this is fantastic.
The fact that the maelstrom monster, whichever one her name was, had braces.
Yes, very funny.
Brilliant. Because it was like it was such a great way of writing this compelling scene, but then also bringing it back to like this age appropriate, funny anecdote. Yes,
I thought the entire thing was thrilling. They were, the people getting snatched up by Scylla.
I was like nervous.
It was. I also. It's not just a combat encounter. It's I really, really loved that section. It's probably my favorite part of the book. I was just like, this is legitimately thrilling. I'm having a great time reading this. It was really fun. And then the boat blows up. And Tyson saves the day again.
Rips my heart out again and again.
Thank God he wasn't dead.
Oh my! I was immediately like, "There's no way if he kills Tyson, I'm gonna be so mad." And then he shows up on Rainbow, our best friend of all time.
But this does lead me to the thing that I thought. Well, the thing that I really didn't love about this book is that there's so much set up with the dreams and the empathic link with Grover. We got to get to Grover and save him from the Cyclops, and there's so much set up for it, and they get there and they're out in like a chapter or two.
They are. It's very fast.
And what happens is fun and cool, and they get out of there, and I don't have a problem with what happens, but it does just feel like this was set up as the main plot of the entire book, and the conflict was resolved so fast. It was just, and the things are getting there and even getting back. The book was very much about the journey, not the destination, which is normally fine.
Always fun.
But there's enough things that it feels like it has middle book syndrome to me, where it's just a lot of it is about giving us backstory on more characters. We get more on Clarice, we get more on Luke, we get more, and this is actually very important, I think, on the main plot. We hear more about Percy's prophecy and about him turning 16, which I really liked. More about Kronos. It felt like the plot was kind of just there because it had to be, as opposed to something that really changed a lot. And yes, getting the fleece and bringing it back is what leads to the giant reveal at the end of the book, which I did also very much enjoy. I don't know, it felt perfunctory to me.
I didn't mind it because I was just having a grand time.
Great.
Which I think is great because you have to have those books, especially in a longer series, that are going to be set up.
Yeah,
You
of
have
course,
to have those things that are going to be set up. And a lot of times you can tell. Like, you can read through and, like, it's, you know, I find myself trudging through certain books and certain series because of that. But this one, I was just having a grand old time.
Yeah.
So I see what you were saying, but I didn't mind it or notate it. I thought it was funny that we talked about Circe and the island, and that after Percy gets retransformed into a human, his guinea pigness like becomes his anxiety,
Yes.
like his way to notate his anxiety. I'm interested to see if that continues throughout the book, because there was one reference to it right afterwards which like made sense, and then he referenced it again later on, and I was like, oh, is this his anxiety?
I don't
This
remember.
is how he's looking at anxiety?
I don't remember if it does, but it would be
like,
really
it's kind of
clever
funny.
if they allowed that to continue. I would like that a lot.
I also wrote down, is Annabeth secretly the strongest Avenger? There were a couple moments where she did some things earlier in the book. I wrote this down early in the book, that it was like, is she just like the strongest?
Well, I mean, yes. She's also had arguably the hardest life.
She has, and she's awesome. Obviously on Team Annabeth, but I was reading that and being like, oh, cool. Are we going there? Are we like, is she like basically invincible? She's obviously not. There just have been a few peppered in references where I was like, oh, is she like the strongest?
She's pretty great.
She's
pretty awesome. She's very
I want that for her.
efficient and good at basically
It reminded me of very much the like Captain Marvel syndrome of like, oh, okay, cool, she's just so strong.
She's the strongest one.
Yeah.
Sure, great. So, overall, what would you rate this book?
What are we rating
what
it
are
out
we
of?
rating it? My immediate thoughts, Cyclopses or Fleece.
How are you going to make a fleece visual?
I'm sure someone else online...
Alright, we're going to do it. Let's do it out of golden fleeces.
I hope I don't regret this.
I'd give this one a 4.5 golden fleeces.
4.5
out of 5.
It's very
I really
good.
enjoyed it. I thought it was very fun. I didn't really think about it too much as I was reading it, and I was able to read it very fast in a way that I was like, oh, I was very intrigued.
Sure,
I loved
great.
it. And Tyson. It's all for Tyson.
Tyson, yes. I will say, because of certain things like Tyson and that thrilling sequence when they're entering the Sea of Monsters, I'm going to give this 4 Golden Fleece out of 5. I was going to give it something a little bit lower, but there were enough things about it that really engaged me that I'm going to keep it at a 4.
Yeah, I loved it. All right, so let us know, are you big Tyson fans? Is he your number one? Is Annabeth the strongest Avenger? Do you agree with us? Do you not? How do you feel? Are we complete fools? Do you love us? Let's be best friends. Leave us some comments. There's the comment.
Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked the video, please be sure to subscribe so you can join us on our next adventure.